When my sister walked out of that adoption center with the baby I had been waiting 2 years for, she turned to look at me, standing frozen in the parking lot, and smiled. That cold, perfect smile. "Junkies don't deserve babies," she said, and she walked away with my child in her arms while my entire family stood around her clapping, taking pictures, calling her blessed. That was the day I realized I wasn't just the black sheep of my family. I was the disposable one. My name is Grace Holloway. I'm 31 years old, and I've spent most of my life trying to earn love from people who never thought I deserved it. I work as a nurse in a pediatric ward in Portland. I spend my days holding sick children, whispering to them that they're safe, even when I'm not sure I believe in safety myself anymore. But I always knew, somehow, that I wanted to be a mother. I didn't care if it took years, or if I had to do it alone. So when I got the call from the adoption agency saying I'd finally been matched with a baby boy named Eli, it felt like the universe had finally smiled back at me. For 2 years, I went through interviews, home inspections, financial checks, the kind of scrutiny that makes you question your worth as a person. But I did everything right. Every form, every background check, every home visit. I painted Eli's room pale blue, folded tiny onesies into drawers, and kept a stuffed elephant on the crib because I'd read somewhere babies respond to soft gray tones. I even practiced saying, "Hi, I'm your mom," into the mirror, over and over, until the words felt real. But my family didn't celebrate. When I told them the news over dinner, my mother didn't even look up from her plate. "That's nice, dear," she said, "but Lauren just found out she's expecting. Isn't that wonderful?" That's my sister, Lauren Holloway, 2 years younger, blonde, charming, and, as everyone calls her, the perfect daughter. Growing up, she was the one who got away with everything. Broke curfew? She's just young. Got caught lying? She's stressed. Failed a class? The teacher didn't like her. But if I spoke up, if I disagreed, I was too emotional, too intense, or jealous. So when Lauren suddenly showed up at the adoption agency 2 weeks before I was supposed to bring Eli home, I didn't think much of it. She claimed she just wanted to see how the process worked. I didn't know then that she was planning to destroy everything. The morning she took my baby, I remember what the sky looked like. Overcast, cold, that kind of Portland gray that settles into your bones. I was standing in the agency parking lot still holding the envelope of final paperwork when the director came out looking pale. "Grace, I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "There's been a report. We received information that you've been struggling with substance abuse. We can't release the baby to you." It felt like every sound in the world vanished. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't even drink." She looked away. "The report came from your family. There were photos, statements. We have to investigate." And then, through the window, I saw her, Lauren, walking out with the baby in her arms, wearing white, smiling. My baby, the one I'd waited for, prayed for, dreamed about. And when she saw me standing there, she actually stopped, turned around, and said those words that will never leave me. "Junkies don't deserve babies." Then she walked away as if she'd won. The camera flash from my mother's phone went off behind her. My father stood there, quiet, hands in pockets, doing nothing. I wanted to scream, to tell them I wasn't a drug addict, that I could prove it, but my voice felt locked somewhere deep in my chest. All I could do was watch the taillights of Lauren's car disappear with the baby I thought was mine. That night, I sat in Eli's room. The crib was still empty, the walls still soft blue. I held that gray stuffed elephant in my lap until the sun came up. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. I realized I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to beg anyone to believe me. I didn't have to fight like they expected me to. Because sometimes, silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. So while my family celebrated Lauren's miracle adoption, I made one quiet appointment. Just one. And months later, when the DNA results were read aloud in court, the judge gasped, because that baby, the one everyone said wasn't mine, turned out to be something no one in that courtroom expected, not even me. Before everything fell apart, my life was quiet, predictable, almost painfully ordinary. I lived in a small townhouse just outside Portland, close enough to hear traffic at night, but far enough that I could see the mountains on clear mornings. My neighbors were polite, the kind who waved but didn't ask questions. I liked that. I didn't have much family support, so I built peace wherever I could find it. My routine was simple. Up at 6, coffee at 6:15, work at 7. I'm a pediatric nurse, so my days are filled with the laughter and cries of children who remind me daily what courage looks like. I've held premature babies who fit in my palm, sat beside mothers who couldn't breathe from fear, and whispered promises to kids fighting impossible battles. Everyone says I have a calming energy. Maybe that's true. Or maybe I just learned to stay calm because no one ever did for me. My parents, Ellen and Martin Holloway, weren't cruel people, just cold. My mother had this way of turning every good moment into a comparison. If I got an A, she'd ask, "Did Lauren get one too?" If I lost weight, she'd comment, "Lauren never had to try." My father barely spoke. He was a man who disappeared behind the newspaper, who believed silence avoided conflict. But silence in our house didn't mean peace. It meant Lauren's version of truth always won. And Lauren, she was the storm everyone pretended was sunshine. She was the kind of girl people gravitated to. Blonde hair that caught the light, a voice that could sound sweet even when she was being cruel. She had this way of making everyone feel lucky to be in her orbit, until they realized they were just there to make her shine brighter. Growing up, she'd steal my things, clothes, makeup, friends. And when I confronted her, she'd tilt her head, smile, and say, "Don't be so dramatic, Grace. You always take everything so personally." It's strange how those words stick. Even as adults, every time I wanted to stand up for myself, that voice echoed, "You're too sensitive. You always take things personally." So I stopped fighting. I became the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who showed up to every family dinner even when no one noticed if I didn't speak. But the one thing I never gave up on was the dream of being a mother. It started as a small ache, then grew into something that shaped every decision I made. I saw how love healed children in the hospital, how one gentle touch could calm their fear. I wanted to give that, not just to someone else's child at work, but to my own. When my relationships failed, and they always did because I was too focused on work, I decided I didn't need a husband to have a family. So I applied for adoption. The process was brutal. Endless interviews, financial checks, and psychological evaluations. Every question felt like a test. Why do you want a child? What kind of mother will you be? Do you have emotional support? The last one always stung, because family was supposed to be my answer, but it wasn't true. My mother said adoption was too much responsibility. My father said, "You should wait until you have a man." And Lauren laughed. "You? Raising a kid? You'd cry every time it sneezed," she said once, smirking across the table. But I ignored her. I filled out every form, passed every background check. I kept believing that if I worked hard enough, did everything right, the universe would eventually say yes. And one morning, it did. The agency called to say I'd been matched with a baby boy, Eli, born healthy, waiting for a home. They said my profile stood out for its stability and compassion. I remember hanging up the phone, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped it. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried, the kind of tears that come from hope, not sadness. That night, I told my family. We were sitting around the dinner table, my mother, father, and Lauren with her husband, Derek. The smell of roast chicken filled the room. "Grace, I got the call. I'm approved. They matched me with a baby boy." Ellen, "Oh, that's nice." Lauren, "A baby boy? How cute. Well, we were actually thinking of starting our own family soon. Right, Derek?" Derek, "Yeah, sure." Lauren laughed softly, that perfect fake laugh that always meant trouble. I tried to keep smiling, but something in me deflated. My news had lasted 10 seconds before it became hers. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. The adoption was mine. My dream was mine. After dinner, I showed my mom a picture of Eli the agency sent, just a hospital photo wrapped in a blanket, eyes barely open. "Ellen, he's cute, I suppose. But don't you think it'll be hard? Babies need constant attention. You don't exactly have experience." Her words slid in like knives coated in politeness. "Grace, I'll learn. Ellen. I'm sure you'll try, dear. She patted my hand and smiled that patronizing mother smile, the one that says she already decided you'll fail. That night, I drove home and sat in the nursery I'd started preparing. The moonlight fell across the empty crib. I whispered softly, "Don't worry, Eli. I'm coming for you soon." For the first time in years, I felt full, hopeful, certain. But if I'd looked closely at my sister's face that evening, at the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, I might have seen what was coming. Because Lauren wasn't happy for me. She was planning something, and I had no idea she was about to take the one thing I loved before I ever got to hold it. It started with a phone call. One short ring that changed everything I thought was safe. It was a Tuesday morning, a week before I was supposed to bring Eli home. I'd just finished my shift at the hospital, 12 hours on my feet, exhaustion melting into excitement. I was halfway through folding a basket of baby clothes when my phone buzzed. Grace Holloway? Yes, this is she. This is Mrs. Duvall from the Bright Hearts Adoption Agency. We need to talk. Her tone made my stomach drop. The kind of voice nurses like me use right before bad news. Is something wrong? There's been a report, Miss Holloway. Someone contacted us claiming you've been struggling with substance abuse. We're obligated to investigate before finalizing placement. For a second, I thought she had the wrong number. Then my heart started pounding so loud it drowned everything else. That's not true, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. I don't even drink. I can take a test right now. I understand, but we have to follow procedure. There were supporting statements. Her hesitation told me she didn't believe it, but rules were rules. She lowered her voice. I'm truly sorry, Grace. The complaint came from a family member. That sentence shattered me. I hung up and drove straight to my parents' house. No makeup, still in my scrubs, adrenaline shaking my hands on the steering wheel. My mother opened the door like nothing was wrong. Grace, you look a mess. What's happened? Someone told the agency I'm a drug addict, I said. They paused the adoption. Who did it? She frowned, avoiding my eyes. Honey, people talk. Maybe they're just concerned. Concerned? Mom, this isn't gossip. This is my life. From the kitchen, I heard the clink of a spoon in a mug. Lauren's voice floated out, calm, syrup sweet. Maybe they saw something you didn't realize looked bad, she said, stepping into view in her perfect beige sweater. Lauren, what did you say to them? She widened her eyes, feigning confusion. Me? Nothing. But you have been tired lately. Remember at my birthday, you could barely stand. Your eyes were glazed. Because I had a migraine. Sure, she said softly. That's what addicts say, Grace. It felt like being punched and not knowing where to hit back. My mother crossed her arms. Grace, there's no need to raise your voice. Maybe they're right to be cautious. You can be emotional. There it was again. That word. Emotional. As if caring too much made me unfit to be a mother. Mom, you've known me my whole life. Do you honestly believe I'd ever... We're just worried, dear, she interrupted. Lauren added, if you're innocent, you'll prove it. No big deal. But I saw it. That tiny flicker of satisfaction behind her eyes. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. In the car, I screamed until my throat burned. Then I sat there, shaking, realizing the people who should have defended me had chosen silence. Again. Days passed in a fog of calls and paperwork. The agency needed new tests, background verification, and character references. Every hour felt like a trial for a crime I didn't commit. At night, I'd open Eli's file and stare at his picture, whispering, I'll fix this, baby. I'll bring you home. But then, a new blow. 3 days later, Mrs. Duvall called again. Her voice was shaky. Grace, I don't know how to tell you this. Another family has been cleared for Eli's placement. What? That's impossible. He was already matched with me. They met all the requirements, married couple, excellent references. Who? Lauren and Derek Holloway. I dropped the phone. I drove to the agency in disbelief. When I arrived, I saw them through the glass door. Lauren in a white dress, holding Eli. My mother and father standing proudly beside her, Derek's arm around her shoulder. Balloons tied to a stroller, cameras flashing. I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed to run in there, to take him back, to shout the truth. But I couldn't move. Lauren turned, saw me standing outside, and smiled. The same cold smile from childhood when she broke my toys just to watch me cry. "Oh, Grace," she said, stepping closer, voice sugar-sweet through the glass. "You shouldn't be here. It's better for everyone. This way." Then, loud enough for the staff to hear, "Junkies don't deserve babies." Everyone laughed awkwardly, thinking she was joking, but I knew she wasn't. When they walked out, my parents kissed her cheek. My mother whispered, "God works in mysterious ways." I stood alone in the parking lot, the wind cutting through my scrubs, holding nothing but empty air where Eli should have been. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in the silent nursery, staring at the pale blue walls, because somewhere inside, I knew crying wouldn't fix it. Neither would pleading. Lauren had stolen my baby, and my family had helped her do it. But what none of them realized, not Lauren, not my parents, not the agency, was that I wasn't going to disappear quietly this time. I wasn't broken, I was just getting ready. So while they celebrated their miracle, I opened my laptop, searched one name, and made an appointment. An appointment that would change everything. People think revenge starts with anger. Mine started with silence. After the adoption was stolen, everyone expected me to collapse, to scream, to beg, to lose control so they could point and say, "See, she's unstable." Instead, I went to work, smiled at coworkers, changed diapers, monitored IV drips. On the outside, I was the same calm nurse everyone knew. Inside, I was unraveling. Each night, I came home to that empty nursery. I'd stand in the doorway listening to the hum of the baby monitor that would never transmit a sound. The blue walls felt colder now, like the color itself was mocking me. Then, one evening, my friend Naomi, another nurse, came over. She found me sitting on the floor holding Eli's hospital photo. Naomi: "Grace, this isn't right. You have proof. Why aren't you fighting back?" Grace: "Because everyone believes her. The agency, my parents, even people at work whisper about it now." Naomi: "Then get someone who has to believe facts, a lawyer." That was the first time I realized silence could be a weapon, but only if I used it wisely. The next morning, I drove downtown to meet Miles Carter, a family law attorney with a reputation for being relentless in court. His office smelled like coffee and paper, the kind of place where truth gets built into strategy. He listened as I told him everything, the adoption, the fake drug allegations, the moment my sister walked away with my child. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back, thoughtful. "Miles." "Grace, let me ask something uncomfortable. Has your sister ever been pregnant?" Grace: "No, she's been trying for years. They said she had complications." Miles: "So she went from not being able to conceive to suddenly adopting your matched baby, right after you were accused of drug use?" Grace: "Exactly." He tapped his pen against the desk. "Miles, that's not coincidence, that's a setup." I stared at him. "But how do we prove it?" Miles: "First, we establish motive. She wanted the baby. You were in her way. Second, we prove fraud. Someone falsified information at the agency. And third," he paused, "we request a DNA test." I frowned. "A DNA test? She's not related to Eli." Miles: "Maybe not, but what if you are?" The question hit me like a jolt of electricity. I laughed it off at first, thinking he'd misunderstood. "Grace, that's impossible. Then I stopped, because something clicked. 2 years earlier, before the adoption process, I'd participated in a fertility research program. It was supposed to be anonymous. I donated eggs for families who couldn't conceive. The clinic promised confidentiality, and I never heard about it again. My chest tightened. No, that couldn't be connected. Could it? Miles: "Grace, did your sister ever know about that program?" Grace: "She used my old laptop once. My email was logged in." We sat in silence for a long moment. The air felt heavy with realization. Miles: "If she accessed your records, she could have manipulated paperwork, claimed a genetic link. It would explain how she fast-tracked approval. And if Eli came from your donation cycle." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I whispered, "He's mine." He nodded slowly. Let's find out. From that day, everything changed. Miles filed for court-ordered DNA testing under a petition of fraudulent adoption. He moved fast, gathering evidence, contacting the fertility clinic, pulling IP logs from the agency's database. Each piece built a story of deception, and every trail led back to my sister. While all this unfolded, Lauren continued her parade of perfection online, posting photos of her miracle baby, captioned with Bible verses. My mother commented on every post, so proud of our beautiful family. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I didn't show up to holidays. People assumed I'd accepted defeat, but in reality, I was preparing for the storm. One night, Lauren called me. First time since the adoption. Lauren, you should move on, Grace. This bitterness isn't healthy. Grace, I'm not bitter. Lauren, then why keep fighting? God gave me this baby for a reason. Grace, maybe he gave him to the wrong woman. She laughed, that laugh that had haunted me since childhood. Lauren, always jealous, you'll never learn. I hung up, heart pounding, not from anger, but clarity. I wasn't that quiet, apologetic sister anymore. I was a mother reclaiming her child. Weeks later, Miles called. Miles, DNA results are ready. Court date is set for next Friday. Grace, are you sure we have enough? Miles, Grace, trust me. Once the judge reads this report, no one will ever question who you are again. That night, I reopened the nursery, dusted the shelves, refolded the onesies, placed the gray stuffed elephant back in the crib. For the first time, the room didn't feel empty. It felt like waiting. I looked around, whispering softly, I'm coming, Eli, I promise. Because this time, I wasn't walking into a courtroom as the sister who lost everything. I was walking in as the mother who was about to take it all back. The morning of the hearing felt colder than it should have. Not weather cold, air cold, the kind that creeps into your lungs and stays there. I arrived at the Multnomah County Courthouse 30 minutes early, clutching a folder that held every document Miles had prepared. Outside the courtroom doors, I could hear the faint cry of a baby echoing through the hallway. For a second, my heart stopped. I didn't have to look to know it was Eli. He was there. My hands trembled. 2 years of hope, months of humiliation, and sleepless nights had led to this. When the doors opened, Lauren walked in like she was entering a photo shoot. Perfect hair, pastel dress, pearl earrings. She carried Eli on her hip, bouncing him gently while whispering, Mommy's here, sweetheart. I had to grip the bench beside me to keep from falling apart. Every instinct in me screamed to run and take him, but I stayed seated, eyes fixed on her. Behind her, my parents entered, my mother's chin high, my father silent as always. They avoided my eyes. I didn't care anymore. Then came Judge Reynolds, mid-50s, stern but fair. When he spoke, the courtroom stilled. We are here for the case of Grace Holloway versus Lauren Holloway regarding the alleged fraudulent adoption of minor child Eli Holloway. The words alone felt surreal. My sister, my baby. Fraudulent adoption. Lauren's attorney, a slick man in a navy suit, began with his usual theatrics. Your Honor, my client and her husband lawfully adopted this child. The plaintiff, unfortunately, has a documented emotional instability and history of obsessive behavior. Miles stood immediately. Objection, unsupported claims. Judge Reynolds. Sustained. Stick to facts, counselor. Miles handed the judge a sealed envelope. Your Honor, inside are the results of a court-ordered DNA test conducted under your supervision. The room went quiet. Lauren straightened her shoulders, smirking. That same practiced confidence she'd used her whole life to make lies sound like truth. The judge opened the envelope slowly. The sound of the paper unfolding was louder than it should have been. He adjusted his glasses, then read the report silently for several seconds. His face changed, not just confusion, but disbelief. Then he spoke. According to the results presented, the minor child, Eli, is not biologically related to Lauren Holloway or her husband. Lauren froze. Furthermore, the judge continued, voice tightening, the child shares a 99.8% genetic match with Grace Holloway, the petitioner. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, whispers that blurred into static. I sat perfectly. Still. Lauren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lauren, that's not possible. She's lying. Judge Reynolds, this is a verified laboratory report, and there's more. He turned another page. The investigation revealed that clinic records used during the adoption were manipulated. Access logs show that Lauren Holloway entered private medical data from the fertility research program associated with Grace Holloway. This constitutes fraud. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's shoulders dropped. Miles leaned in, whispering, "Breathe, Grace, it's over." But it didn't feel over yet, not until I looked at Lauren. Her face, that mask of perfection, had cracked. Her eyes darted around, desperate, cornered. Lauren, I just wanted a baby. You always get everything. Mom and Dad always loved you more. Ellen, Lauren, my mother gasped, but the damage was done. The judge slammed his gavel. Enough! This court rules the adoption fraudulent and hereby grants full custody of minor child Eli to his biological mother, Grace Holloway. For the first time in months, I exhaled. When they brought Eli over, I could barely see through the tears. His tiny hand reached out instinctively, gripping my finger, as if he already knew. I held him close, his head fitting perfectly under my chin. He smelled like baby lotion and warmth, a scent I'd memorized in my dreams. The courtroom blurred around me. All I could hear was his soft breathing. Lauren screamed something about unfairness, about God's plan, but her voice faded into background noise. The bailiff stood beside her, calm but firm, while she pleaded with the judge. He didn't respond. He only said, "Mrs. Holloway, this child was never yours." I turned toward the window, sunlight pouring across the courtroom floor like it had been waiting for this moment. Miles whispered beside me, "You did it." I shook my head. No, the truth did. As I carried Eli out of that courtroom, every step felt lighter. Not because the pain vanished, but because I finally understood something. Truth doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs time. Outside, reporters waited, cameras flashing. Someone shouted, "Grace, how does it feel to win?" I didn't answer. I just held Eli tighter. In the reflection of the courthouse glass, I saw myself, the same woman who'd been called a failure, an addict, unfit to be a mother, now holding the proof that love, patience, and truth could outlast any lie. And behind that reflection, I saw Lauren being led away, her face buried in her hands. For once, there was no satisfaction, only silence, because sometimes justice isn't loud or triumphant. Sometimes it's just the quiet sound of a baby's breath against your chest and the soft thud of your own heart finally believing I didn't lose everything. I was never meant to. The courthouse steps were colder than I remembered, but this time, I wasn't climbing them alone. Eli was in my arms, warm, sleepy, his tiny fingers curled around my collar. The crowd outside had already begun to fade. Reporters were packing their cameras, lawyers were shaking hands, and the echo of the gavel still rang somewhere deep in my chest. I took one long breath. For the first time in 2 years, it didn't hurt to breathe. The weeks after the verdict felt surreal. I kept expecting someone to call and say it was all a mistake, that the court had changed its mind. But instead, there were diapers, lullabies, and sleepless nights, the good kind. The nursery that once felt like a tomb now smelled like baby powder and warm milk. The pale blue walls glowed in the morning light. The gray stuffed elephant sat on the shelf again, this time guarding the crib where Eli actually slept. Sometimes I'd just watch him. The gentle rise and fall of his chest, the way his lips moved in his sleep as if dreaming of laughter he hadn't learned yet. Each time, I whispered the same words. "We made it, baby. We made it home." That peace didn't come easily. Lauren tried to contact me once, a short, trembling voicemail. "Grace, I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted something that was mine. Mom and Dad won't even look at me. Please." I deleted it before it finished. Not out of hatred, but because I finally understood that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. My parents reached out too. My mother sent flowers with a note that read, "We're sorry. We didn't know." I placed them on the kitchen counter and let them wilt. Maybe once those words would have meant something, but they'd watched their daughter be destroyed and stayed silent. Some wounds don't need closure. They just need distance. In those first few months, I rebuilt quietly. I took a leave from the hospital to focus on bonding with Eli. I learned how to hold him just right when he cried, how to hum softly until he'd rest his cheek against my shoulder. There were moments of fear, the kind that sneaks in at night when everything's still. I'd wake up suddenly, thinking he'd be gone again. But every time I reached out, he was there, small and safe. And that's when I realized healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in fragments. A morning smile, a sleepy giggle, a new first word. Then one afternoon, I met with Mrs. Duvall, the adoption officer who had once taken Eli away. She looked nervous when I walked in. "Grace," she said softly, "I wanted to apologize. I should have questioned things more closely." "You followed the rules," I replied. "The problem wasn't the system. It was who knew how to play it." She nodded, eyes full of regret. "You'd be amazed how often truth takes the longest path to the surface." I smiled faintly. "Not anymore." As time passed, word about the case spread. People called me brave, strong, even heroic. But I didn't feel like any of those things. I wasn't strong, I was just tired of being silent. One evening, Naomi came over and found me sitting on the floor of the nursery again, this time with Eli crawling around the carpet. "Naomi, you did it, Grace." "Grace, I didn't win, Naomi. I just took back what was already mine." "Naomi, that's still winning." We laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes from peace, not relief. Months later, I drove past my parents' house. The curtains were drawn, the garden unkept. For a brief moment, I thought about stopping, but then Eli babbled from his car seat, pointing toward the window, and I smiled. "No, sweetheart, some roads don't need revisiting." Because the truth was, I didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate ties you to the people who broke you. Love frees you from them. Now, every night before I put Eli to bed, I tell him a story. Not a fairy tale, but ours. About a woman who waited 2 years for a child. About a sister who lied and a family who didn't believe. About a truth that refused to stay buried. And at the end, I always whisper, "You were never lost, baby. You were just finding your way home." He doesn't understand the words yet, but one day he will. Because the real miracle isn't that I got my baby back, it's that I finally got myself back too. The quiet, careful woman who once thought love had to be earned learned something powerful. Love doesn't beg. Love doesn't prove. Love just stays. And as I turn off the light, the room fills with that soft, familiar glow. The same pale blue, now warm and alive. Eli sighs in his sleep. I stand by the door for a moment, smiling through tears I no longer need to hide. "Good night, my little truth," I whisper. Because after everything, the lies, the silence, the heartbreak, the truth didn't just set me free, it built us a family. People say blood makes you family, but I've learned the truth. Love does. It's not about who shares your name. It's about who stays when everything else falls apart. I lost everything I thought defined me. My reputation, my family, even my voice. But in the end, I found something stronger than all of it. My truth. And sometimes, that's all you need. Pause. A soft sigh or gentle lullaby in the background. Then her tone shifts slightly. Warmer, more direct to the audience. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video. It helps more people hear stories that matter. Share it with someone who believes in fighting quietly for what's right. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your own family betrayed you? I read every comment myself. And your stories mean more than you know. And if you want more real stories like this one, stories of truth, resilience, and justice, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon. Because next week's story will prove that even the quietest voice can change everything.